This is the fourth video on this introduction to robot design in VEX parts, and picking up from where we left off, you can see there's two different kinds of nuts here. One has this has a nylon inset to keep it from loosening up. This is a good choice if you suppose you have two bars that you want to attach together with a pivot, and so you don't want to put a screw through and tighten them up so that they're locked together, but you want them to be able to pivot, but you don't want the nut to spin off, or in the middle of your robot mission. So you can use this type. This type has these little star things here. It's called a caps nut, and so those dig in a little bit into the piece of metal. So these you would tighten up, and these keep it from loosening up. And then you just have the regular nut, of course, which I'm sure you've seen before. Most of the types of threads that you have on VEX hardware is either called an 832, so that it's a number 8 screw, which has to do with the size, or a number 6 screw, which is a little bit smaller than a number 8. But they both have 32 threads per inch. That's what the 32 means. So in other words, if you counted from thread to thread, there would be 32 threads per inch. It's called an 832. And these are just, you can have steel washers or Delrin or nylon washers, depending on what your application is. And then we have shafts. So the typical VEX shaft is 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. It's a square shaft, and it has slightly rounded edges. These are collars with a set screw, so you can use these to position wheels or position the shaft, position a gear on the shaft. They also have higher strength shafts, which are 1/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch, they would fit into like high strength gears, which have 1/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch holes in them. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then there's different kinds of spacers, right? So in other words, if you're trying to position a gear in a certain spot or a wheel, then you might want to use some spacers, and we'll look at some more of those. These locking bars, so suppose you have a piece of metal or a piece of wood for an arm, and you want to turn that with one of these square shafts. So this is just a metal piece that you can bolt. Obviously, if you just try to put a hole in a piece of wood, first of all, it's going to be hard to create a square hole in the wood. Not impossible, but difficult. And it's not going to be very strong, right? If you try to turn that piece of wood, if it's a little wooden arm, and you're trying to turn it with a square 1/8 by 1/8 inch shaft, probably not going to work very well. So you'd put the shaft through this hole and then bolt this to the part. It could also be a gear to strengthen it. And so here's just another picture of that locking bar. Now the advantage to this one is you can bolt it, but this is a little insert here that you can take out, and has a spline on it so that you can see this is tilted a little bit. So suppose for some reason the square shaft that you want to put through, you don't want lined up with the holes like this. You want it at some angle, so you can just pull that insert out, turn it, and push it back in, and you have quite a large choice of the different angles that you can mount this at. And then there's different metal for these gussets, so that if you have pieces of channel or bar that you're trying to connect together, if you're connecting them at 90 degrees or right angles, you can use this plus gusset. And these are for, you can adjust these, so you might have a horizontal piece, and then you have another piece that you want to be putting here at some angle, so you can bolt that and then just put a nut, a screw and a nut through here and through that other piece, and then adjust it to any angle you want. VEX provides different types of motors and servos. So notice that this says motor module here and servo module here. It's kind of hard to tell the difference, right? You have to look and see what's printed on the back. And a motor turns continuously, and later on we'll be talking about motors and transmissions, whereas a servo, generally a VEX servo, only turns 100 degrees. And so I'm going to have to pick up here from the next video.